Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Recently, we talked about how a gun was smuggled into the MCC. Well, today we're going to go back to the MCC and talk about the captain who was in charge on the night when Jeffrey Epstein supposedly hanged himself. Now, this is an article from the Daily News, and the headline is, Jail Captain in Charge When Jeffrey Epstein Hanged Himself to Be Transferred. This article was written by Stephen Rex Brown. He's certainly no stranger to emergencies. The Metropolitan Correctional Center captain in charge when Jeffrey Epstein hanged himself, allegedly, is expected to be transferred to a new prison where he will serve as emergency preparedness officer, sources tell the Daily News. So let me get this straight. He gets a transfer, but his two employees face felony charges? Now, I get it. There has to be some self-responsibility, right? They have to be responsible for the actions that they took. They have to be responsible for the fact they fell asleep, etc., etc. But doesn't the captain, who is their boss, share some of the responsibility? I don't even care if he was there that night or not. If you're the boss and you're in charge, the buck stops with you. There needs to be accountability, especially in positions such as this, right? So instead, they're going to transfer him. What is this, the church? They just transfer the priests around whenever there's an accusation against them? This is unacceptable. This man needs to be fired. If the other two are facing charges, then this man needs to face some charges as well. Or he needs to be fired. Something needs to happen to him. Not a transfer, that's for sure. Jermaine Darden's move to FCI Fort Dix, a low-security prison in Burlington County, New Jersey, was delayed due to the ongoing lockdown at the dysfunctional jail in Lower Manhattan, according to a source. So, this guy is going to be rewarded by being moved out of this shithole at the MCC and moved into a low-security prison in Burlington County, Jersey? How's that even possible? How is that even possible? So this guy's a captain. He has a leadership role at the MCC. The place is an absolute shit show, and he's being rewarded by being moved to a low-security prison? How about you just get rid of him, fire him, whatever you have to do, but moving him to another prison? I don't think that's going to go over so well. We saw what happened with the other warden that they tried to do this with, and it did not work out. The Justice Department is absolutely and utterly inept, folks. They're just incompetent at this point. And don't even get me started on the Department of Corrections. They're even less competent than the Justice Department, if you can believe it. As captain, Darden oversees lieutenants and correctional officers at MCC. Among those under his command were officers Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, who were accused of sleeping on the job and falsifying records the night of Epstein's death. A source doubted that Darden was at the jail when Epstein was found hanging in his cell at 6:30 a.m. August 10th, but was confident he was one of the first people called about the crisis. Look, I don't even understand. So he's their boss, but he's not there. So who was the boss in charge, right? That person needs to be in trouble, just like the two guards. And Darden needs to be fired as well. He doesn't need to be transferred. He doesn't need to be moved around in the system or hidden or anything like that. He needs to be fired. He needs to face repercussions for his actions or his inactions, or the fact that his people weren't trained properly, or that his people were overworked. As the boss, the buck stops with you. Thomas's attorney, Montel Figgins, said Darden's transfer and the new title was yet another example of the upper ranks of MCC facing no consequences for systemic Bureau of Prisons failures that allowed the accused sex trafficker to avoid facing justice. He's 100% right. This is just another example of the upper ranks of MCC having no worries in the world. They face no consequences when things go wrong. They pin it on the lower hanging fruit, the lower level employees. They make them take the blame. They make them take the rap. And these guys just get switched around, moved to another prison, and buried in the prison system. Isn't it great to be part of the posse, right? Isn't it great to be on the other side of the two-tier justice system? Well, these two guards, Toa Noel and Michael Thomas, well, they're getting a nice good look at the two-tier justice system right now. They're getting a real nice look at what it means to be scapegoated. It shows you the hubris of the system, Figgins said. They couldn't care less about the reality of what they're doing. They would take this person who was involved in this incident and give him another title. Darden, 48, declined comment. Look, he's right. This guy does not deserve to even be working in the prison system at this point. He needs to be fired and he needs to find another job. He needs to go do something else with his life. He's obviously not capable of handling the duties that come with such a high stress position and a position that requires you to take, to be accountable and take responsibility when things go wrong. The public demands that from these people. And the problem is, for so long, they've been able to get away with it because the higher ups protect them. And that can't happen anymore. These people can no longer they shouldn't be able to investigate themselves. It should be outside investigations that investigate all of this stuff. And, it's never going to be the case if we don't all get fired up and say enough is enough. The transfer follows a pattern similar to that of Lamine Ndiaye, the MCC warden during the Epstein debacle. Ndiaye was moved to a desk job at a regional office in Pennsylvania days after the alleged suicide, I should say. He was expected to assume a leadership role at Fort Dix in February until Attorney General Bill Barr intervened and ordered the transfer to be put on hold while investigations into Epstein's death continue, the Associated Press reported. Look, Bill Barr intervened because he doesn't want the egg on his face, right? He knew that was going to be a bad look, so he intervened, and what? Did the guy get fired? No. Where is he? He's still pulling a paycheck. So it wasn't that Barr intervened because he thought Ndiaye was a bad employee or that Ndiaye was somebody that couldn't do the job. He intervened because he didn't want to face the scrutiny over it. That's the only reason he intervened. It's just like with the royals with Prince Andrew. It's not that they care that Prince Andrew was involved with Jeffrey Epstein. They care that it was found out. They care that it's publicized. And that's the same with Bill Barr, in my opinion. He doesn't give a damn that Ndiaye was incompetent with running the facility. He doesn't care about Darden. What he cares about is not having some egg on his face and trying to make sure public images stay up so that all of the rubes that have been gaslighted by the media for so long continue to believe the narrative. Darden's new title at Fort Dix could come with a pay raise, a source said. You can't make this stuff up, folks. You really just can't make this stuff up. Working at the low-security lockup in New Jersey should be less stressful than MCC, so he's being rewarded for this. This lieutenant is basically being rewarded for his people falling asleep on the job. He's being rewarded for the fact that the people in his department did not know how to conduct themselves correctly. So the buck does not stop with him. There's no accountability for him. He gets moved to a new facility with a pay raise? Yeah, that's not going to work. The 12-story jail next door to the Manhattan Federal Court has been reeling since Epstein's alleged suicide. The building's infrastructure is crumbling. Morale is at rock bottom following the arrests of Thomas and Noel. A gun smuggled into the jail prompted an ongoing lockdown and forced overworked staff to put in even longer hours. The FBI is investigating the flow of contraband into the facility. Oh, you know what, though? I don't even want to hear that excuse. The overworked staff. Look, we all work overtime, right? We all work a lot of hours. We all work a lot of hours. It's no excuse for you not to be able to do your job. All right? Show up, do your gig, and that's it. And if you can't show up, well, you have to talk to your union or whoever's in charge of bringing more people on board, because it's no excuse when you're in a job like this to say, I was tired. That's no excuse. You have a big responsibility when you're in charge of protecting somebody like Jeffrey Epstein. There has to be accountability across the board. Figgins made the case that Darden's leadership was one of many problems at MCC at the time of Epstein's alleged suicide. The sex offender's body was moved in his cell, which is a violation of protocol. They don't have any pictures of what happened that night because they didn't follow proper protocol, Figgins said, and yet he gets another position. We've talked about that at length. We know that protocols were not followed that night. We know the whole entire situation was FUBAR, the camera's not working, etc., etc. And then the fact that this man who was in charge, this lieutenant, his people didn't follow protocol afterwards as well, and this guy's going to get a promotion? Hell no. Hell no. This man should be fired, and everybody involved who didn't follow protocol should be fired as well. They shouldn't be moved around. They shouldn't be protected. They are incompetent. The Bureau of Prisons declined to comment on personnel decisions. Thomas and Noel have pleaded not guilty to charges including filing false records, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years. You know what? I bet you at the end of the day, these two are going to end up doing more time than Jeffrey Epstein. Think about that for a minute. Let that stick in your craw for a minute, huh? It's gross. The two-tier justice system in this country is absolutely gross, and it's never been on display in a more public manner than it is right now. A jail insider described Darden's role as a difficult one. Correctional officers resented Darden for not being tough enough with inmates, while medical staff resented him for being too rigid about regulations, the insider said. He had a reputation for not being liked by anyone, the insider said. Well, that's nice. That's the kind of guy you want working for you, right? A guy that nobody likes. The employees don't like, the inmates don't like. So let's just keep this guy around, right? Just like I say with the NFL, another retread coach. Let's just try this guy out. He has an 0-77 record as a head coach, but we're going to slip him in because things are going to change here. Such a joke. Systemic issues in the Bureau of Prisons were ultimately to blame for the suicide, the source said. Yeah, okay, sure. That's quite broad, huh? Easy to say, oh, it was just the systemic failures, the systemic issues. And they think people are going to believe that because for years people would have. People would have believed the official narrative because there would have been no alternative to it. Well, those days are over. There is now an alternative to their official narrative, and the alternative narrative is the one that actually has the evidence. It's impossible to be at work 24 hours a day, the insider said of Darden, but it is on you to make sure the right people are in place and are doing their jobs. Yeah, no shit, you're the boss. You are the boss. I cannot tell you how many times while I worked in corporate America where I would get calls while I was on vacation about something that one of my supervisors did or what one of my employees had done while I was on vacation. But guess what? Guess where the buck stops? My boss didn't care that I had my ass in the sand and my toes in the water. They didn't care about that. And believe me, I wasn't in charge of guarding Jeffrey Epstein. So if I can be bothered on my vacations and I can work 17, 18-hour shifts, I don't want to hear shit from these people. I don't want to hear shit from these people with these pensions that they're going to grab afterwards. I certainly wasn't lined up for no pension, but guess what? Every day I was in there, no matter what the shift called for, 17, 18 hours, I was the boss. All right? If you're going to be the boss, you need to take the responsibility that comes with that. And sometimes it means eating the shit sandwich. And none of these people at the MCC have taken a bite of the shit sandwich yet. The only people that have taken a bite and had a good bellyful are the two guards, and it is absolutely, positively gross to see. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. If you enjoy the podcast and you'd like to help out, you can do that by clicking on the GoFundMe link inside of the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back later on tonight for the usual daily drop.